When I moved abroad alone at 56, I knew I would have to deal with visas, housing, a different language, and unfamiliar bureaucracy. What I hadn't fully considered was this: what would happen if I fell, had an accident, or became sick and suddenly needed medical help? Who would I call? Where would I go? Who would help me? And if I couldn't manage by myself, who would help me? My experiences happened here in Germany because that is where I'm currently living. But this isn't really a video about the German healthcare system. These questions apply whether you're moving to Germany, France, Albania, Thailand, or just about anywhere else. I'm generally healthy. I don't consider myself someone who requires constant medical care. I rarely visit the doctor's office. But since beginning this move abroad, I've dealt with a fall, pain in several parts of my body, concerns about my medication, tooth pain, doctor visits, physical therapy, chiropractic appointments, and medical expenses that my expat insurance didn't necessarily cover. None of these things were part of the exciting moving abroad plan, but that's exactly the point. Being healthy today doesn't guarantee that nothing unexpected will happen tomorrow, regardless of your age. One of the first incidents happened when I fell during a visit to Erfurt. I wasn't paying attention where I was walking. I was looking for an address, but afterward I had swelling and pain around the base of my thumb. My wrist, knee, and back were sore, and I had some discomfort around my ribs. But I decided to walk back to my hotel. I did not lose consciousness. I didn't appear to have an obvious emergency. I mean, there wasn't a lot of blood or severe pain, but I also don't know whether anything was broken at that point or seriously injured. So I just sat on a bench and waited till I could walk back to my hotel. And I had to decide what to do alone. That's when living abroad alone suddenly feels very different from taking yourself to lunch or exploring a new city. There is no one beside you looking at the swelling and saying, you know, I think we should have that x rayed. There is no one watching how you walk, noticing whether you seem worse than you did an hour ago. You have to decide, is this something that will improve with rest? Do I need a doctor? Should I go to the pharmacy and ask for their advice? Do I need an x ray? Could I safely wait until tomorrow or next week? Or am I minimizing something because I'm frightened by the idea of navigating a hospital alone in a foreign country? Then came all the practical questions. Where is the nearest appropriate medical facility? How will I get there? Do I call an ambulance if it's not an emergency? Will someone speak English enough to assist me? What will my insurance cover? It's an expat basic policy that I brought with me. If I can't use one hand properly, I wasn't able to write with a pen, how will I manage my luggage, groceries, or transportation? A fall that might be manageable in familiar surroundings becomes more complicated when you're alone in a country whose healthcare system you don't yet understand. Okay, so medication became another source of concern. I thought I would be fine. I obtained a prescription from my doctor in Arizona before leaving the States to travel to Germany. I was told that Germany has the medication I take, so not to worry. Um, So I brought my American prescription with me. But of course, a German pharmacy needs a German prescription, obviously. So I made a doctor's appointment and explained to the doctor why I was taking this medication and for how long, and that it needed to be tablets. And he filled the prescription for me, and it was actually a very simple process. I think I paid about 40 euros for the doctor's visit, which was very affordable. And it was about 19 euros for the medication. So I took the prescription with me, paper prescription, to the apotheca, the pharmacy here in my city, and they filled it for me within 1 day. And I went back and picked it up and carried on. So it's actually a simple process here, but it might not be where you're going. So if you're going to Albania, France, Spain, anywhere else you might be going, make sure you understand before you travel how you will get refills on your prescriptions. It's important to know too that you will receive a different brand likely, and your body might take a while to respond to that brand and for you to feel better again. So, as far as refills here in Germany, you can email the doctor's office and say, I need a refill, and they write a new prescription for you, a paper one. You go down to the office, you pick it up, and take the new prescription to the apotheca. So it's really there's many steps to be followed, but it's actually a very simple process. But one time I was traveling in Albania and I had my American prescription, and I walked into one of their pharmacies and they said they could fill the prescription as written, but when I left, they had given me capsules instead of tablets. And for my digestive system, that's a problem. I can only take the tablets and be comfortable. So, but I left Albania and I had to continue taking those capsules for a couple weeks before I got to Germany to get a German prescription for tablets. So in other words, this process can be complicated depending on where you're going. So familiarize yourself with what you will need before you leave, write everything down, get a prescription from your American doctor before you leave, make copies of that prescription, and just be prepared for unexpected events or requests or questions that you may need to do some additional work for. So just be ready to do whatever you need to do. But the main point is don't wait until you have only 2 days left of your medication, because now you're in an urgent situation and it might become more urgent because you can't get your medication. So definitely spend time planning that if you take regular medications. And then there was my tooth. I have a bridge in my mouth that's about 22 years old, and I started developing tooth sensitivity around the bridge area. And I didn't know I had this deep cavity under the bridge after all these years. But I started experiencing a lot of discomfort. It was waking me up at night. And I thought, okay, I can't wait until I go back to the US in a few months. I have to have someone check this out. So I looked up dentists around my apartment and I looked at reviews and picked the closest one and hoped for the best. And I made an appointment, and the ladies that work in the office are very gracious and very kind, but speak limited English. But they went out of their way to make me comfortable, and they X-rayed the bridge, and they found they found the decay that needed to be removed, and they advised me I would need a root canal as well, which was thrilling because again, I'm new in Germany and I don't have dental coverage specifically for Germany at this point. I only have my expat insurance. So, but they gave me like they gave me a copy of my treatment plan and what the total would be for the root canal, and it actually turned out to be around 1,400 euros. So it wasn't extremely cheap, less than it would be in the US, of course, as we know, particularly without insurance. And one thing here too, they're very concerned about you as a person. When you don't have insurance, they worry about you. Well, will you have dental insurance soon? They might ask you because they really want to help you, but they don't want to overcharge you and send you these exorbitant bills if there's a more affordable way to get dental care. So everybody was very kind, very helpful. I had no pain. If you ever need a dentist in Bavaria near Nuremberg, there is a wonderful lady. I have been to her now 3 times to complete the work that was needed, and I have had no pain afterwards. So she is quite talented with her dental skills. So if you're ever in Germany and you need a recommendation, send me an email and I'll give you one because she's incredible. So what we did is we used Google Translate basically to talk about dental problems because she knew the basics in English and I have the basics in German, but talking about dental work and your teeth requires a very different vocabulary for both of us. So we just did our best with Google Translate, which was not always accurate, but it was enough that I understood what she was going to do and that I needed to follow up and etc. So it was actually a great experience. I mean, no one wants to go to the dentist, but it is one of the best dental experiences I've ever had in my life. And I've had many of them. So definitely, I'm glad that part is done. But so definitely think about these things before you leave the USA. What will you do if you have a dental emergency? You won't know what your out of pocket expenses will be necessarily. So before you move abroad, I would recommend going to a dentist and getting a checkup and finding out if there's anything that's potentially a dental emergency that you don't want to deal with in another country, especially when you've just arrived there. So do yourself a favor and go get a cleaning and an x-ray and make sure you're good to go before you get on that plane with your luggage and your hopes and dreams. So then after I fell in Erfurt, I recovered. I was able to walk around just fine the next day, use my hand for most things, but not my thumb. Um, I had a lot of bruises, but I was healing. I was doing okay, but I still felt like I needed to go talk to a medical specialist about what happened. So I'm used to going for chiropractic treatments once every 2 weeks in the USA. So I made an appointment with a chiropractor and they examined me. There were no x rays, they just kind of like felt around my ribs and my shoulders and my hands and determined that I had not broken anything. Everything seemed to be okay. And so they gave me this incredible adjustment. It was the strongest adjustment I've ever had. So I felt a lot better the next day. So I had the chiropractic expenses. I also went to a physiotherapist who did some work on my back and my shoulders because of the fall. So again, like the dental experience, these costs start to add up, even if they're more affordable than at home. So it's really important to, again, to be prepared for any type of health crisis or a financial crisis at the same time, and to make sure you have the savings or the means to pay for these expenses you were not expecting that have now come into your world. So they could happen. I hope they don't, but it's possible. I mean, I rarely fall. I think it's the second time I've fallen since I was a kid, so I wasn't expecting to fall walking in this little German town, but that's just it. You These are things that happen that are not expected, but you have to pay for at least a portion of your care if you need it. So, more to keep in mind before you leave the state. The most difficult part was not always the pain, the appointment in another language, or the expense, even. Sometimes it was having no one to talk to in English when I was frightened by a symptom or unsure of something. When something feels different in your body, you want to tell someone who knows you if possible, and you want someone to say, "You've experienced that before," or "I think you should call a doctor." So before she died, my mother was that person. She knew I was a hypochondriac. She knew I thought every symptom meant something serious like cancer. So she would be my partner in the process and reassure me that I was likely okay, unless it was very clear that something was wrong. So, no longer having that person around who knows your personality, your history, who can sit beside you while you're worried, that's very difficult. And there's also a vulnerability in asking a stranger for help or having people pick you up off the ground. And how do you approach a neighbor in an apartment building you barely know or don't know and say, "I'm not feeling well. Would you please check on me later?" And maybe that's not even safe to do where you're living. Would you feel comfortable asking someone to take you to a hospital? That would be very uncomfortable for me. Who would bring my phone charger, my clean clothes, or medication if I was admitted? Who would help me return to my apartment when I was discharged but still couldn't walk comfortably? Do I just take an Uber, a taxi? In Germany, those add up quickly. And here is another question that may sound simple but isn't always. Who would notice if you became sick and stopped answering your phone? Do you have someone that checks on you? I do. I do have someone that texts me regularly. Living independently doesn't mean we stop needing people. Real independence is not pretending that we will never need help, especially as we get older. It is making a plan for how to get help before we are too sick, injured, or frightened to create one. So, if you're thinking about moving abroad alone, congratulations, that's awesome, especially in middle age. Here's what I believe you should do before something happens. First, learn the emergency number for the country where you will be living. We all know 911 in the US. We don't even have to think about it, but you're leaving the US. Also, learn where people go for urgent problems that are not life threatening. Like in the US, we have urgent care centers for that. The correct answer may be different in every country. It could be a hospital emergency department, an urgent care clinic, an on call doctor, or a private medical center. And do you phone ahead? Do you send a WhatsApp message? Download WhatsApp if you have not. Don't assume that the system will work exactly as it did at home and that you'll figure it out when something happens. Second, identify the nearest hospital, general practitioner, dentist, and pharmacy in your immediate area. Save their name, address, and telephone numbers in your phone. Do this while you are healthy and calm, not at midnight while you are in pain and afraid. Third, create a short medical summary. Include your medications and dosages, allergies if you have them, relevant medical conditions, insurance information, and an emergency contact back home. Keep it in your phone and carry a paper copy in your wallet at all times. If you don't speak the local language and you're just learning, translate the most important information in advance, like the name of a medication or a medical condition. Fourth, understand your insurance. Look specifically for coverage of pre-existing conditions, prescriptions, dental care, physical therapy, ambulances, and hospitalization. Find out whether you are expected to contact the insurer before receiving non-emergency treatment. Make sure you know what they pay for. Do they pay for x-rays only? Know whether the provider bills the insurance company or whether you must pay first and request reimbursement, which is the case with the expat insurance I have. The word insured does not automatically mean everything is covered, right? Fifth, maintain an emergency fund for healthcare, if possible. You may need to pay for an appointment, medication, a taxi somewhere, an uncovered treatment, or even an unexpected flight back home. Sixth, plan how you would physically reach help. Do you have a ride app or a taxi app? Uber, Lyft, something local? Could you navigate public transportation while injured if you needed it? Do you know your complete address well enough to give it to an emergency dispatcher? Sounds so basic, right? These things are critical. If you live in a building with stairs, and a lot of buildings in Europe have stairs, what would happen if you hurt your knee, your foot, or your back, and there was no elevator? And seven, don't wait until you are almost out of medication, as we discussed a while ago. Know the generic name and dosage and begin arranging a refill early or a new prescription early. And finally, identify at least one person nearby whom you could contact. It might be a neighbor, it might be a landlord, a church member, a language classmate, a local friend, or another expat or immigrant you've met in the community. You are not asking that person to become responsible legally for your health, but you should have someone nearby who knows your name, knows where you live, and would be willing to check on you or help you determine where to go. The emergency numbers and healthcare systems will be different in Germany, France, Albania, or anywhere else you travel. The preparation is universal. Know where to go, know how to get there, understand your insurance that you've purchased, keep your information accessible, carry it with you, and know whom you can contact if needed. And not to be morbid, but what about if something happens to you abroad? You know, we're getting older. What if you were to pass away? Then what happens? Do you know? What would they do with your belongings or you? How would your remains be sent back home? What do you want done with your remains if something should happen to you while abroad? These are real human concerns and events that happen all the time. And so while we're dreaming and excited about our new life abroad, we have to really look at reality alongside the dream and ask ourselves if we're prepared and are expecting the unexpected. Okay, so let's wrap this up. I don't share any of this to frighten people away from moving abroad. I think it's a wonderful decision. That's why I did it. But I am a realist. I am still glad that I came to Germany despite these experiences that I had. But otherwise, healthy people can be in an accident, their teeth can hurt, prescriptions run out, and bodies react in unexpected ways at our age, right? So, being alone changes how we handle those moments often. Moving abroad alone at 56 has shown me that I am capable of handling far more than I expected. So, believe me, it's worth it. Even the difficult moments were worth it. It has also taught me that doing something independently does not mean I must handle every problem without help or by myself. Prepare while you are healthy. Know where to go and who to call. Understand what your insurance actually covers. Really read the paperwork and keep some money available for any unexpected event. And begin building human connections before an emergency forces you to depend on a complete stranger. So, if you live abroad alone or you're considering it, what have you done to prepare for an illness or injury or a financial setback for that matter? Please share your experience in the comments. Your answer may help someone think about something they hadn't considered before. And if you want to follow the honest reality of building a new life abroad as a Gen Xer, please subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.